Hi! What's up, everyone? It's Kendall here, and if you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up, home skillet, biscuit, and happy Saturday. If you don't know what Saturday is when I do a little something on my channel called Bad Movies and a Beat, the series on my channel where I talk about bad movies while it's putting my makeup on. Something about the blue contacts makes it feel like you're staring into my soul. I don't know if there's science behind that, but do you need to see into my mind? Let a girl have a little privacy. As in, I hate how I run into ads. I'm so mad. Oh my god. This video is sponsored. Why, hello there. What's up? Hi. It's Admiral Kenny. Today's video is sponsored by Privacy. Privacy is the completely free to use service that allows you to make dummy cards for every time you purchase something online. Ah, it's brilliant. Think of it as like a VPN for your credit card. So it allows you to purchase things safely without compromising information to every website that you use where you buy stuff. And on top of that, you can create limits as well as single-use cards. Allow me to explain why this is such a brilliant idea. Those people that just buy like random things on like eBay, and the sheer fact that I haven't had my identity stolen is truly astounding. Basically, Privacy allows you to hook up a payment option, so your main banking place, and allows you to make like little filter cards, if that makes sense. So that they're not getting your actual card numbers. You're getting these like dummy cards that you can use for either just a specific store or bill, or you can do single-use cards. And I love to do a single-use card. Because again, going back to my shopping habits, another thing that I do is subscribe to crappy streaming service. They usually entice you with like a trial. I'm looking at you, PASSIONFLIX'S. Next thing you know, you forgot and now you're getting charged up the butt because you forgot to cancel your card. Well, what you can do is set it up on a Privacy card, single use, and then just set it to $1. And then the moment they try to charge you, it cut it off. It's super easy to set up. All you have to do is go on privacy.com/Kennie and you can sign up using the link down below. I've hooked up hella single-use cards, and let me tell you why. I have a tendency, specifically in video gaming and streaming services, this is where it hits me. I forget that I signed up to PSN, PlayStation Plus, Nintendo Switch account, Origin, and then because I'm really bad at checking things, at the end of the year, I'm like, I spent $300 on video games that I didn't play. So guess what I did immediately when I found out about this Origin? I downloaded Origin in 2017 to play The Sims. I played it for about a month, and they have since charged me a membership every year for the last 4 years, 3 of which I forgot. And the one that I did remember, I said, well, what if I play The Sims? And then it's like, no, you're not gonna play The Sims. So now I switched it over to a single-use card so that at the end of the year when my subscription's up, it'll just turn off. Or I can sit there and evaluate whether or not I want to continue to make bad purchasing decisions. But the thing about Privacy is that it puts it in my hands and not an auto renewal. I also decided to finally bite the bullet and get YouTube Premium because I just set it to $1. So if they want to charge me after that 30-day, but it's just a really good way to have more control in your finances, and it just gives you that security that someone can't take that card information that you got from your bank and then just go wild with it. So if you want to check out Privacy, again, that's privacy.com/Kennie. That is privacy.com/Kennie, and sign up for an account. Also, as a treat for my viewers, those of you that sign up with the link down below will be able to get a $5 credit that you can spend on whatever you want. So that's just free money, $5. I mean, who doesn't like free money? It's for a limited time, so feel free to check it out as soon as possible. And big thanks again to Privacy for sponsoring today's video. And let's get back to the debauchery. But seriously, the contacts make me look particularly dead on the inside, so I'm kind of feeling it. But anyway, last week we were here. We all shared in a collective fever dream that is Dragon Ball Evolution. There's something about watching that film that feels so distant. It feels like it happened a long time ago. Is this a trauma response? It was us delving into the universe of anime adaptations that should never have existed, especially if they're gonna make them in the United States. If you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend that you do up above, or you can check it out in the Bad Movies on a Rate playlist. But today, I tried to stay away, okay? I tried my hardest. I was away for a month, okay? And I got suckered back in, and I will reap the consequences for that action. But today we're returning to PASSIONFLIX'S. But I gotta say, man, this one broke me. And I'm mad because there's 2 other movies. It's the first series that we've looked into, and now, like, I'm here. I can't let it go. Now, as always, when we're referring to Passion Flicks, I have to do my little unsponsored spiel. One day. But why would they? Because I talk about them regardless. But if you don't know, or you're new to my series and you haven't heard me gush, is that what I would call my response to Passion Flicks is? I think I'm obsessed. So regardless if that's a good or a bad thing, that is where I'm at. But Passion Flicks is essentially, it's a crappy streaming service where they turn equally crappy romance novels into even crappier film adaptations. At this point, I feel like I've watched maybe 3 or 4 for this channel. And I have to be careful because once I dip a toe, I usually have the response of like, I must watch everything now. But the problem is, again, this movie, ironic it being the one that most people will bite the bullet and get Passion Flicks for, is so bad. It's so bad. And it's a part of a series, so I'm gonna have to watch it all. Because I've already dipped a toe in, so I can't leave now. Dip a toe. No reason to hide. Get all the way inside. I'ma take it for a ride. Sorry. Today we are looking at Gabriel's Inferno, part 1, because there's 3 movies. It's the 2020 adaptation of, again, a book by the same name, a series, a trilogy by the same name, about a mousy, doe-eyed blonde named Julianne, and her forbidden love affair with her grad school professor, Gabriel Emerson. And I gotta say, this movie somehow is impressively bad because it's the result of so many bad decisions all coming together, but somehow being put together for consumption. That's even different compared to other corny, cheesy crap I've seen on Passion Flicks. Because again, I've watched quite a bit. I hate, it depends on the day, Passion Flicks films because they have this sort of formulaic, lifetimey, cheesy predictability about them to some degree. Like, they are in some ways very self-aware. I feel like everyone on set knows they're making garbage. But I had this inescapable feeling while watching this movie that to some degree, there is an air of sincerity here in the sense that I think they really, at least at one point, aspired to making a real movie. I'm not even saying like a good one. I'm just saying like a movie. Very interesting way combines all of the things I hate most about romance and shoves it together in a 2-hour time frame. One of my biggest pet peeves in films are ones that kind of insultingly say to you, you won't notice. You won't notice this blaring problem in the storyline, in the logistics of certain things. But like all of the components that led to the final product are just deeply questionable. Like why did we choose any of this? Everything feels like a mistake that they all agreed upon. And beyond that, it's just a logistical nightmare. I have had to rewrite my notes for this film over and over and over again. And partially it's because I am trying to do, I'm quite the martyr. I am trying to make this movie make sense for you as much as I can. But if you go into this movie blind, you will be confused, probably a good 3/4 of it. And then at the end, when you find out the reason or whatever, you're like, well, that just negated the first hour and a half of this movie. That makes no sense. So, and in order to help you, here's the spoiler. Julia and Gabriel fell in love 6 years ago, and he doesn't remember it. She does. How romantic. And then on top of that, he's now her professor and falling in love with her in the present and still doesn't know who she is. They don't say anything very early in the movie that's like, I can't believe he doesn't remember me. So we're just watching it in this vague, like, I think she knows him, but they never let the audience know that that's the disconnect. So again, the first hour and a half, you're in this haze of confusion, but not in the way that I think they were trying to keep this lore of like, oh my God, what is the background between these two? But now it just makes everything else not make sense because, and I'm getting ahead of myself, the whole movie, there's so many signs that he should know who she is if she mattered at all. Like not even in love, he should know who she is. But the sheer fact that he doesn't is hilarious to me because you're still trying to package this as romance. And I just, wow, okay. But today's essay, I shall explain why A, not a great setup for a romance movie, B, makes no logistic sense, and C, explain why this was so poorly articulated and set up that at the end of it, when I found out that they're supposed to know each other, I just got angry. But without further ado, this is Gabriel's Inferno, Part 1. So, the movie begins with a beautifully ironic and hilarious foreshadowing even of my experience with this film. And the opening theme, for some reason, is Mozart's Lacrimosa. Choir bitches arise. Like Lacrimosa. As in the Requiem. As in the songs sung at funerals and are about death. Pardon? What? Why? Of all the songs to start off a romance with, you chose a requiem. You chose a song about death. And not only that, it ends up being like this reoccurring theme, like a song that plays here and there throughout the movie. And I'm not sure how they're trying to use this because I haven't watched the other two movies. But let's say I give the movie more credit and suggest that they meant it to be like sort of an Easter egg to allude that this love will not survive and it will not make sense. This love is meant to die. But I suppose I won't know until the end of the last movie. But if it has anything to do with the other PASSIONFLIX'S films and how they kind of go about things, it's not looking great. Ooh, as a side note, hearing Lacrimosa reminded me that years ago when I was in high school, I discovered a dancey jazz version of Dies Irae, and it is the most comically hilarious and pretentious joke. Just shaking ass for the Requiem. Our main protagonist, again, is Julianne, or Julia, a tiny grad student taking up Dante-focused Italian literature. Her new professor is our titular character, Gabriel Emerson, the tall, conventionally attractive man with a sexy Italian accent and a deep-seated fiery rage that we're supposed to understand is attractive because he's tall, white, and conventionally attractive, whereas I find it equally as disconcerting as any other context of just an always angry man. And the opening scene is giving me very decently budgeted porno. The tall, domineering, masculine teacher is scolding the innocent, chaste student. And this is one of many reasons why I just simply can't get jiggy with this film, because the foundation of their relationship, at least in the present, is that he is her teacher, i.e. a direct authority figure, and she is a student, and I'm just supposed to forget that. I'm just supposed to forget the particular dynamic that presents, because every romantic quote-unquote thing that he does just feels like an abuse of that power at that point. You can't just say, I'm taking you to dinner to a student without there being this kind of threatening aura around that. Like, it's not like, hey, want to get lunch and we can work on a paper. There's this like, we will eat together. We shall eat together. And then it progresses further into kissing me. You feel? But then again, I guess to some degree I understand that there is an element of like power play dynamics for someone that consumes contents like this. This might be like a cute little power play fantasy for you. But I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't if I didn't at least say in real life this would be very different. But after this scolding, again in a very porno flick type way, he says, come to my office after class. At the end of class, the guy that was sitting next to her introduces himself. His name is Paul. And he is effectively going to be like the nice guy. He notices that she is new to the department. He introduces himself, says that he works with Gabriel, but just gives a bunch of exposition about how awful Gabriel is and how he's always angry at everybody. And he's kind of known for having a temper, which is okay. Sexy. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, he's presented as the other guy, the non-Dahmer McDomison, which means he's not abusive. So justice for Paul. At least in this movie, I don't know, he might be terrible in other movies, but in this one he seemed pretty cool. But she doesn't want Paul, she wants the dude with the anger issues. We accept the love we think we deserve and all that. But Julia goes to Gabriel's office and finds the door partially closed and him arguing on the phone with somebody. And I use the word arguing in like quotations in the sense that the man is a very bad actor.
I loved her too.
I don't know what time because I don't know what kind of flight I can get, but I'll be there.
Just tell him I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
But I don't know if that's because he's just inherently a bad actor or he does have quite a thick Italian accent. And I believe that is his actual Italian accent. I don't think he's putting on an Italian accent. If I recall correctly, I looked up the actor and he is actually Italian. So I think this might be just a language thing that makes him particularly seem so uncomfortable. But regardless, very uncomfortable, the whole movie. And as we'll find out later, Gabriel was adopted at like 9 years old. So he shouldn't have an Italian accent theoretically, unless, you know, he was just really stuck in there. But he's arguing with somebody, and from context clues, you can tell that someone may have passed, but we don't really know who or the circumstances around that. So seeing that he's having quite an intimate conversation, she decides to just leave a note that says, "I'm sorry," and doesn't come to the actual meeting. Now, apparently, Julia already has a photo that seems to be quite personal, right, of Gabriel. And on my first viewing, I was like, well, that's creepy. I was thinking, oh, this is about to be a whole different type of movie than I was expecting. I was like, oh, we going into the stalker route. Okay, cool. I didn't know that's what I was going into, but of course not, because that would insinuate it being an actually eventful movie. But again, being that I've already told you the spoiler, it's because she already knows Gabriel. He is actually the brother of her best friend from high school. Oh, is that why he was so mean to her in the beginning when he was her professor? And it's like, no, he's just like that to everybody. He's just a dick. He didn't even remember her. But she gets a call from her father, and he lets her know that Rachel, the high school friend, her mother passed. He says to Julia that he went over to their house and, quote, Gabriel wasn't there. So they're referring to him by first name. And so, follow me, I'm about to get angry. You're telling me that she was best friends with his sister, close enough that her father would visit their house. She knew him and her father knew him as Gabriel. They knew him by name. They have a moment in which they, quote, fall in love, and he doesn't remember her. And I'm supposed to still feel romantic feelings about their reconnection. That is why I'm mad. This is just terrible storytelling. The next day, Julia goes to check her mailbox and she sees that she has a note. The note specifically that she left at Gabriel's office that said, "I'm sorry." Apparently on the other side, it said, "Emerson's an ass," because Paul had actually written on that paper on the first side, and which was funny. It was funny, I'm not gonna lie. So there's a disciplinary meeting held for this, which is hilarious. I've said some pretty out-of-pocket things about my teachers to their faces, and I never But yeah, they hold a disciplinary meeting for her calling him an ass. Like, y'all are like adults. Like, she trips, and I have this realization. I'm like, oh God, did I fall back into the 50 Shades of Grey universe? I thought I had escaped you. Damn it, man. Gabriel's just ornery, and it's the most unnatural, like, anger progression I've ever seen. And there was something about this particular scene that reminded me so much of my, like, school experience, because hello, I'm an asshole, and and that tends to come out particularly in situations where I have like a male authority figure who's very pompous, and I can't help but call the bluff. It's a sickness. I really don't know how to just let it go. The amount of times I've been in a situation where I've had like a male teacher just go on and on about how, like, you know, not explicitly, but just basically saying how great they are, and I can't let them go without saying, I noticed it. I noticed the bullshit. For some reason, they've always taken it as charm, which is hilarious. I should email my one professor. I know he found this channel. What's up? Yep, this is what happened with all that believing in me. This is what I did with it. With all that bright future and expensive education, I make videos on the internet. Anyway, I say this to say that I would have laughed at him. I probably wouldn't have cussed him out, but I probably would have been like, are you serious? Because I can't. But he's like super pissy and combative for no reason. And he's like, at the end of it, you drop things and you annoy me. This isn't gonna work. Change majors. And again, I was so confused because I was like, is it because he recognizes her? No, he just don't like that she dropped things. Whenever I do red eyeshadow, I always think of Sweeney Todd. And in my head, all I can hear right now is, poor thing, better you should think that she died. Yes, I lied, cause I love you. I'd be twice the wife she was. I love you. How could that thing have cared for you like me? Mrs. Lovett, what a charming notion. But yeah, Gabriel's just ornery and irritated all the time for no real reason. And I'm like, do you need a hug? And then at the end of it, he's like, you dropped things. You missed a meeting. We can't work together. I don't want to work together. Maybe you should even drop out. And again, based off of how strong of a reaction this was, I thought that maybe he did recall that there was a thing between them and that angered him or something. It was confusing to me, but apparently no. He just had to stick up his ass, and that's just the story plot. It's like, okay. So distraught and saddened, Julia walks home, and it starts to rain, and she ends up getting just drowned in it. And then in an act of guilt or kindness, whatever, he picks her up and gives her a ride back to her place, at which he kind of invites himself inside right after like berating her and saying, well, drop out. It's like, ooh, this sequence of events. I was so like whiplashed. I was like, huh? Who's what? One, he is your teacher, which should be enough to not invite yourself into their home. Two, once he gets in there, he's hella rude. He was like, oh, you live in a bucket. Like, what? Like, how do you live like this? And he recognizes at some point, oh man, I'm sorry, I'm being rude. Mayday! Oh God, too much glue. But she's like, it's okay. You just lost your mom. As if that's like an excuse to be an asshole. And then after I watched it the first time and came back to it, I realized how stupid of a line this was. Because recall, how would she know that information? She's just his student and he doesn't think. How do you know that? Again, he does not remember her, doesn't think they've ever met, but she, a random student, knows intimately that he just lost a family member, and particularly that it's his mom. If she was even listening in on his phone call before, she wouldn't have known it was his mother. Overwhelmed, he leaves. Then he immediately comes back, invites her to a steak dinner, or I should say, tells her we're going to have a steak dinner.
I'm starving, and you're joining me for dinner.
And again, I understand that the intent was for him to be like, sexy, take charge, man, dom, manly man. But again, he's her professor. So when I hear him say, you are joining me for dinner, not even like, hey, are you hungry? You want to get something to eat? Like, you know, if you were, presumably if he's like your professor or something, and like, that's very normal to like get coffee with a professor, or like, hey, I'm hungry. You want to get some food? And it's like, okay, yeah, it's a very normal thing. But the assertion of you are meeting me for dinner, feels like an implied or else. You feel anything that's supposed to be cute and him taking charge, it feels like a threat. And I'm still confused about the response that y'all want me to have, especially because we've already established that he has an anger issue. So, romance? Question mark? Okay, cool.
Tell me why, after everything you've said to me, should I join you?
Because Emerson is an ass.
God.
But at least now he knows it.
Shut up. But yeah, she gets dressed. They go to a fancy restaurant. This is progressing very quickly. Especially for people that are supposed to be strangers in his mind. But they go to a fancy Italian restaurant. She impresses the owner with her Italian, as well as Gabriel. They play displaced campfire song music as she sips wine. She tells him that the reason why she's studying Dante is because someone she knew introduced him to her, and the story of him and Beatrice. Hint, hint. This should remind him of something, yeah? But it doesn't. He's just like, oh, wow, it's crazy. Girl, if I was her, I would just give up. I would have took it like, well, that wasn't important to him at all. Okay. I'm over here studying this because of him, which I hope not. I hope it just sparked a genuine interest and she just found her own love for it. But in case she did study this for him, bitch, don't do anything for a man. Don't change jobs. Don't change locations. Don't change any plans for a man. My God, don't change schools. So the friend from high school, Rachel, and of course, Gabriel's adopted sister, comes to town to visit Gabriel, and they run into each other and she's like, oh my God, my best friend from high school, nah. And Gabriel sees them talking. His sister says she was my best friend from high school. She has now said that she started this because somebody brought up Dante and Beatrice to her, who is now in front of him taking his class about Dante, and he's still doesn't remember. Now you see why this movie was driving me insane. The first time I watched it, I was just confused. I was like, wait, what's happening? Then I watched it a second time and I was like, oh, this is just stupid, poorly written. And it's just so grating on my nerves. I'm sorry. And each time I had to watch it to make this video, I noticed more things that showed me that this movie is stupid. Rachel notices that there's like a vibe between them. It feels a little, a little bit of animosity is forming. And she's like, whatever problems you have, get over it. I'm seeing both of you while I'm here. He ends up showing her this super important and rare book, something about Dante, whatever. He's like, no one knows that I have this but my lawyers and now you. And it's like, why are you telling her this? But it's like, oh my God, they're getting closer, I guess. I don't know. There's a wine incident that results in Julia breaking a glass. And for some reason, her first response is to pick it up with her bare hands. He nurses her back to health. More confusing dialogue where the sister is like, don't hurt her. She's been hurt before. And it's like, what the where did that come from? Like, what? You need to treasure her for the treasure that she is. And it's like, that's his student. Like, I don't have to do anything but teach her stuff. Look, like in the classroom, like nothing outside of that. There's no double entendre with that. He ends up saying something along the lines of like, why didn't you tell me that you were friends with my sister? I would have been nicer to you. And her response to it is like, I'm happy you took your wrath out on me as opposed to someone else. Or he can just stop being a dick to everybody. That may also be an option. Let's not close the book on that option in particular. It's like everyone around him feels like he's entitled to be an asshole, and he's not. You don't have to martyr yourself for him being whatever.
I have a bad temper.
Oh no.
And I can be destructive. It would be inadvisable for me to lose my temper on someone like you.
Or you could get some help. Therapy does wonders. Really, I'm so tired. I'm so done.
I'm not very good at resisting temptation.
So then we get a flashback to finally tell us what is the history that they have with each other. 6 years ago. Ooh. Is the beginning of a lot of can of worms if we're not careful, because this scene is actually very creepy to me. Like this entire like flashback is really creepy to me. At best, it's just really, really creepy. And at worst, it could possibly be somewhat pedophilic. And that's on top of all of the disorienting romanticization of him being really angry and abusive and his bad tracks. That was also, it was too much going on at the same time. I don't know how old Julia is in any part of this movie, but if I had to guess, you're a master's student. You're, give or take, 23, 24. Do the math. She could be anywhere between 17 or 18. Age ain't nothing but a number, but a jail cell ain't nothing but a room with bars. You feel me? It's very creepy. It's very freaking creepy. Even best case scenario, and she is of age. I'm looking at him as a professor, and he's giving me like 35, 36. So 6 years ago, you were late 20s, talking to someone who is either not of age or just barely. But essentially, one day, 6 years ago, Julia goes over Rachel's house, again, her best friend from high school, and she's comfortable enough to just go into her house, which again ruins the idea that you didn't know who she was, because she was close enough that she was just walking through your doors. But okay, she comes to the house, and basically Gabriel, who she refers to by first name, so she knows him well enough to say, I know who Gabriel is. But apparently she's over there to console Rachel because Gabriel just had another tantrum. This time, it resulted in him pushing his parents, breaking things, throwing somebody into a table who is now in the ER. And this is the beginning of their love story. Please stop turning violent men and men with really bad tempers into sexy anti-heroes. Their brokenness is not sexy. It's not a way to prove a woman's capability of healing someone with her pussy. Then... This isn't funny, but it made me laugh. In a great display of wonderful writing again, Rachel lets us know, in case we didn't know, that her family is broken by saying, my family's so broken. My family is so broken. Kudos, great writing. Love that. So Julia goes outside to console him, and it's just looking at them together. It's like, why did they do that to him? Like, outfit wise, that's just hideous. Oh my God. It just feels like a 35-year-old snuck into all alternative societies at the same time. Like, he snuck into the e-boy kids who were anime kids, who were K-pop fans, who are also probably in some way associated with scene kids and goth kids. It just feels like this early 2000s ball of deception, just all in this one thing. But then outside of that, they were able to age her down a little bit. She looks younger. And them sitting next to each other and the following events also perpetuates the concern I have. Like, how old is she? Because she looks young, and he's giving like 40-year-old down on his luck Chance Crawford after a DUI. Now, I can't explicitly say this is pedo in a technical sense, but this conversation feels very pedo adjacent, pedo light. He'll remark several times where he's like, I'm so happy I'm the first whatever boy to hold your hand, your first kiss. There's something very fucking creepy about that. And I don't know what response and feelings they wanted me to have, and it's driving me nuts. So like, again, even if she's not underage, there is this element of him getting off on being the first person to do any of these things with her, and I find that inherently creepy. Anyway, I can go on and on and on, but again, this whole scene just sent me spiraling. I was like, what am I, but okay, let's assume that she's of age and yada yada yada, and he's not in his late 20s. But he continues to say things that are like emphasizing how like young, naive, and innocent she is. He's like, have you ever held a boy's hand? I'm glad I'm your first. He calls her Dante's muse, Beatrice, which is where she keeps bringing this up throughout the movie. He basically explains that Dante had fallen in love with Beatrice when she was, quote, still very young. And he just loved her from afar. I don't know. They just look like Chris Hansen is going to pop out from behind a tree and be like, what's going on here? We have your text log. Do you enjoy those week-old cookies? They kiss after he again makes sure that he knows that he's her first kiss as well. Is this crying? What? Wait, what? Oh, this is just funky. And he just goes on and on about how he's been waiting his whole life for her, that she's his Beatrice, and that he loves her, but that he must go to somewhere out there because he can't be here, and one day for her to come find him in hell.
My only hope is that you find me one day. Look for me in hell.
He went off the deep end so quickly, and he don't remember you. And I'm sitting here losing my mind for other reasons outside of the obvious, like, really creepiness of this whole thing, and just really, like, I'm losing my mind because I'm trying to understand if he was referring to himself when he was talking about the Dante looking at her from afar and loving her all his life, blah, blah, blah. So are you telling me you've been doing that, which is creepy? Reminder, because that means she was definitely underage at some point. He was looking at her from afar, yearned for her, knew of her as his sister's best friend, does this big confession about how he's always felt for her and that she's his muse and his Beatrice and yada yada, but I have to go and come find me. You're telling me that man 6 years later doesn't recognize her when she becomes his student, when he's reminded that that's his sister's friend, but apparently they never met because that's what the sister says, but how could they not have? When she says that she started because she had a love for Dante and Beatrice because somebody she knew was really interested and started talking to her about it, as they're falling in love currently, and he still does not remember. He literally just says that to everybody. I believe that. And I just get more and more confirmation of that throughout the rest of the movie. Because again, there's more situations that you should remember her in unless you say this to literally every woman you meet. They've been playing the Requiem, Lacrimosa, over and over again throughout the movie. And they particularly play it when she receives a gift from him. Which is hilarious because again, unless this is meant to be like he will be her undoing and her death, and she's not catching all the red flags I'm catching. If it's meant to say like everything he does feels like a little bit closer to death, then sure. But if not that, hey. But they go to a club because there's always a club scene for some reason. But yeah, that sounds fun, going clubbing with my angry professor. But Julia talks about Paul and Gabriel gets jealous. She dances with another man and Gabriel gets jealous. He offers her a taste of his whiskey, which again, I'm supposed to believe is supposed to be sexy, but though she says no, and he's like, I insist. In a very like creepy, pushy way, he's like, drink it. And I'm just sitting there like, he definitely roofed it. And then, to put a pin in that creep factor I was saying from 6 years ago, he remarks about how he can tell that she's a virgin. Stop pretending to be anything else, which would have been creepy already. But you add in that extra dynamic that this is her professor. Bitch, oh no. Gabriel gets jealous at something else and pins her against a wall. She says something like super melodramatic along the lines of like, why don't you just stick a knife in my heart and get it over with? And I'm just like, please do. Like, damn, me too. Gang, gang, get me out of this misery. Like, this movie will not end. They dance, and I gotta admit, this is my favorite part of the movie. This is the only part that I find just so entertaining because there is this like comedically bad and very distracting version of Bésame Mucho. That's the accent that she sung the song in. So you can imagine. I don't speak Spanish and I know that was a bad Spanish. Bésame, bésame mucho, como si fueras de noche la última vez. Perdete después. And admittedly, it was so distracting that I didn't hear nothing they were talking about during this. I had to replay that like 8 times. I'm like, I cannot hear over bésame. After I played it like 8 times, I realized that the conversation is him basically like, I'm not being professor tonight. That you made that decision all by yourself because And then, as if to drive me insane, me specifically, it feels very personal. He says, well, you look very familiar. You reminds me of Dante's Beatrice. Are you sure that Rachel never introduced us before? That solidified it. That solidified that he just says this to everybody. He literally just says it to every brown-haired white woman he meets. At some point, the next day or something, the sister gives the rundown about how he was just left as a sea urchin by his family. Street urchin, not sea urchin. Jesus. I imagine, see, this is what's wrong with my mind. Immediately when I said sea urchin, I imagined him like as a small child, as a sea urchin, dressed, just wandering No! Oh, man, okay. As a street urchin, fuck me. Oh, man. As a street urchin. And they adopted him at 9 years old, which again, why he has that accent. Also, whose hospital was he outside? Were they just in Italy and they stole a child? I just thought about that. Where did he? Anyway, whew, girl, Kendall, just finish the video. They found him wandering outside of a hospital when his birth father died. He, for some reason that nobody is aware of, left him a crazy amount of money, so he's actually very rich. So, you know, we had to make sure that was taken care of because there's no way that we can have a romance without a rich, conventionally attractive white man with anger issues that we must romanticize and coddle and cure with love. It's the whole romance novel starter pack. Julia goes for coffee with Paul, gives him an awkward kiss, then sees Gabriel, and then when she sees him, she feels guilty for kissing Paul, and Paul is like, I don't mind staying friends. Like, we can stay friends. I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. That's fine. And if you change your mind, you know, let me know. So like a really nice guy, really great, understanding guy, but nope. I look like a hot who. He gets super drunk at night for some reason, and I forget why, who cares. And Julia helps him out, takes him to his house. He does another thing that I think they wanted me to think is sexy and thrilling, but just greatly scared me.
So you can sleep it off now.
And kiss me goodnight. And I go to bed like a good little boy.
Please don't hurt me.
And then they kiss. He then commences to vomit on her and on himself. Romance. She changes into his clothes, changes him out of his clothes because it's all covered in vomit. She puts him to bed. He gets a phone call and hears a woman's voice who's very angry to hear her voice, and she starts calling her a whore and stuff, but that's not important because we have more important things. he's gonna remember that she's Beatrice. And that, I guess, makes us forget that a woman is just like calling her out on her name and that she may be a relationship of his, but okay, doesn't matter. He remembered me as Beatrice, bitch! There's sappy moments. He's like, oh my God, I love you. And then they fall asleep, cuddled in each other's arms. Next morning, she's on cloud nine. She's like, I'm gonna make him breakfast. I'm gonna write him a cute little note and sign it, your Beatrice. And in the morning, he does not remember any of that. He does not remember her as Beatrice. He does not remember anything. He's like, what the hell are you doing here? Why are you in my clothes? Why are we naked? What happened? And at first I was very confused by this. I thought, did he think that she had like taken advantage of him, and which is a fair enough concern to have, but apparently he was more concerned that he had taken advantage of her. I was afraid that I was rough with you because you're so innocent. You're so He apologizes for kissing her. Why did you refer to yourself as Beatrice in the note? You told me to come look for you in hell. Well, that's where you can stay. And then he's like, oh bitch. And she says as the elevator closes, I'm not your Beatrice anymore. Thank God. Thank God. It's, oh my God, thank God it's over. I have never been so, that's not true. I was about to lie. It's been, has it been a while? I don't know. It feels like each week, the last week just fades into the ether. It feels like a new sense of frustration while watching this movie. I think I haven't been this annoyed watching a romance since, probably 365 days. Yeah. That's the last romance, quote unquote, that broke me. I feel like I'm that level of frustration, but it's in a different way. That one, it was trying to make me think that kidnapping was hot. This one is just, it's all of the things. It's so bad and also frustrating, and it was boring. I don't think I really even hit on that. I had to start and stop this movie. This is not the first time I've seen this movie, by the way. Me preparing for this. I've seen this movie when I first discovered PASSIONFLIX'S. So I've seen this a long time ago, but it was so boring that I could not focus on it. It's so hard to make a movie so bad that I physically can't watch it. They've done it. And when I finally did sit there and watch it over and over and over again, I just got angry. I just want reparations in the form of a time machine where I can get all of that time back. And it hurts me because I know we're not close enough to that yet. Alas, I'm just left with the broken pieces. But yeah, if you like this video, like it or whatever. I'm so broken. I am. Oh my God! If you like this video, feel free to like this video. Follow me on all my social media if you want. If you don't, that's also fine. All of which are KennieJD. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.